Money. We all want it, need it, and think about it. But have you ever wondered why we make the financial decisions we do? What if I told you that there is a simple, profound reason behind the financial inequality in our society? A reason that transforms your knowledge about finance into your personal behavior. The reason? Psychology. This hidden force shapes every financial choice made by every single human being. This video was entirely created around the book The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel, and if you stick through the entire video, I promise you that you will be able to use this force in your favor. There are millions of things that we have zero control of in this world, especially in the financial and investing world. One thing is certain, we're all subject to the same relationship with the financial equation regardless of our income. Our wealth is simply determined by our income subtracted by our expenses. The result of this equation is simply a reflection of our ability to save, and it's a talent that's greatly underestimated. The vast majority of people prioritize increasing the first part of the financial equation, their income, which is totally responsible and beneficial for whomever finances. But it is actually better to focus on the second part of the financial equation if you want to stay wealthy. That's why there are many cases of millionaires who have filed for bankruptcy, even if their fortune exceeded what 99% of the world's population would never have reached in their lives. Some big names in the industry, like Mike Tyson, Walt Disney, or even 50 Cent, are one of many who have been victims of the inflation of their desires. Even if your fortune is $150 million, if you have bigger eyes than head is that your expenses are $166 million, well, you're poorer than a person having a fortune of $55,000 and expenditures of $33,500. Learning to settle for less creates a margin between what you own and what you could have. This habit is a very effective way to control his savings because opportunities to increase his income are very rare. So it's a simpler way because we have more control over this data of the financial equation. Your savings represent the gap between your ego and your income. The most difficult skill to acquire in the financial world is to learn how to stop the inflation of one's desires. When someone's income starts to rise, his desired needs increase in a way that exceeds his income. It is simply human behavior. This concept is called lifestyle inflation. There is this one desire that every single human being has on this planet, which is to always seek to get better of what they already have. It is in these cases that social pressure comes into play, because 90% of the time we buy luxurious material goods for the purpose of impressing others, and not for our own pleasure. However, there is a major danger with this. Having tasted what's better in our world, the best food, houses, cars, etc., it is nearly impossible to get back to the lower category. This multiplies our ambition instead of multiplying your satisfaction. It is therefore a vicious circle that starts in this search of always wanting to obtain a higher social identity than yesterday by obtaining material goods often useless. The richest and most successful have understood that there is and always will be richer and more successful people than yourself, and comparing in advance is a fight lost in advance. A golden rule for managing your money: don't lose sleep. Warren Buffett revealed at the 2013 annual meeting of Berkshire Hathaway that out of 400 to 500 shares he owned in his lifetime, only about 10 generated the majority of his wealth. Charlie Munger added that Berkshire's impressive long-term performance was based on a few key investments. This finding highlights that even for legendary investors, success often comes from a small fraction of their decisions. This perspective can help investors rethink their own experiences. Failures and setbacks are normal, even for investment legends. Comparing yourself to others' best moments can be misleading. Understanding this can ease the pressure of always being right and encourage a more realistic approach to investing, focusing on long-term strategy rather than short-term perfection. A famous rule that we can refer to in this case and many others in our lives is the Pareto law, which states that 80% of your actions will result in 20% of your results, and that the other 20% of your actions will be equivalent to the remaining 80% of your results. In the case of Warren Buffett at Berkshire Hathaway, it was even more significant, because 10 shares out of 400 shares in his career, or 2.5%, led him to achieve 80% of his results. This rule is equally as important in other areas where a goal is at stake, because in many parts of our life, the majority of events are determined by a very small number of events. It is obvious that the money you own is the reason why you can buy yourself material goods that will be noticed by others. But think about it in an instant. When we see a person in the street with our dream car, our first thought is not to think that the guy who drives the car is too cool. No, we say more often, "When I'm that guy driving this car, I'll be so cool." Incoherently, we bring all our thoughts back to our personal situation, but what you own impresses no one as much as yourself. Spending money to show others how wealthy you are is the surest way to stop being so. Purchasing these very expensive material goods to seek respect and admiration from others won't get you anywhere. You will be much more likely to get your reputation of kindness and humility by your actions than by the power of your engine or your new watch at hundreds of thousands of dollars. Let's see what really defines wealth in today's world with this next chapter. Morgan Housel mentions in his book that there's an excessive majority of investors who fall into the same trap, the historians as prophets trap. He noticed that too many investors tend to take the past as an indicator for future events, while we are in a world where progress is based on innovation and change. This means that there's no event in the history of humanity that has had or is going to have the same impact as another event. We must take into account that exceptional events called black swan events that occur at times when we expect them least but are most impacting on the economy. Events such as the Great Depression, the Second World War, the 2008 financial crisis, or even just recently the COVID-19 crisis, are events no one could have predicted, but which each had tremendous effects on the stability of the economy. As an investor, the most important thing when making forecasts is to anticipate that they may not come true as planned. Albert Einstein, famous physicist known for developing the theory of relativity, once said, "Compound interest is the eighth wonder of the world. He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it. Who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it." That part of his quote is referring that understanding compound interest allows you to utilize its potential to grow your wealth, while ignorance can lead to financial burdens. There are two types of compound interest in the financial world. The first one is the one that works against you, when you have debt which compounds over time if you don't pay them in time. This is the most famous among the two and is very common by people chasing dopamine and who are not focused on their future. The other type of compound interest is applied to investments or savings and works in your favor by accelerating the growth of your wealth over time. That is utilized by the wealthiest on this planet to increase the rate of growth of their investment. The multiplicity effect of compound interest takes its full splendor over time. The importance of starting early and being consistent is key to good long-term compound investment strategy. As Charlie Munger once mentioned, the golden rule to benefit from the multiplicator effect is never to interrupt without necessity. We do not have to turn very far to demonstrate a successful example of this concept, because his great friend and business partner Warren Buffett is the perfect example. Indeed, having started to exploit this concept at a very young age, as early as 10 with only $120, with its fortune approaching $150 billion as of Q4 2024, we can certainly say that this strategy has proved its worth. Buffett's talent is to know how to invest, but his secret is to know how to wait. A crucial concept in finance that the vast majority of people think they don't need because of their high ego is the margin of error. We all think we can manage our personal finances without making any mistakes. Unconsciously, we all fix ourselves onto what we think is the best percentage to invest each month or the best amount of money to spend in restaurants each month, and many, many more situations. We each set a certain limit or margin of personal error that we think is appropriate to our situation. The problem is that our personal judgment about our personal finances can and is extremely wrong. For example, if you ask somebody to evaluate a friend's renovation project, they most often predict that the budget could vary between 25 and 50% because of unexpected events. However, if anyone is questioned about their budget on their own project, they're confident that the work will be completed on time and at the original cost. This is always why many people have to change their budgets when they're renovating or even buying a house, because there are always unexpected events that will happen in our lives at times when we least expect them. The definition of a margin of error is one way to counter these contingencies. Nothing worth the cost is free. In the end, no matter how much money an individual has to spend, they have to pay a price. And it's not necessarily a monetary cost. For example, if you have to bring in a lawyer for a personal situation during your lifetime, you have the option of hiring a lawyer at your own expense, but who will take your case much more seriously than a lawyer offered free of charge by the state. The cost to pay in this case is monetary, yes, but also emotional, because you'll face uncertainty, doubts, and regrets during your trial process. That's why you say everything has a price. But there are prices that don't appear on the label. But in other situations, the price is fully indicated, demonstrating its true value. The problem with this is that a large majority of people can't get past this psychological price bar to see the true value behind it. To give you an example that Morgan Housel mentions in his book is one of Disneyland. A pass to Disneyland costs about $100. In return, the value behind this cost is a day your children will never forget in their lives. In 2019, 18 million people thought this price was worth paying. The same is true in the world of finance. Some stocks are worth more money out, knowing that it is trustworthy. You have to know the difference between value and price. As Warren Buffett once said, the price is what you pay, the value is what you get. The more you want something to be true, the more you are able to believe in a story that overestimates their likelihood of it being true. That said, it is for this reason that most follow predictions of large stock investors successful in their industry. That's due to the fact that if someone has the power to create such an ROI, even with 0.1% chance that his next prediction will be the power to change our lives, it is obvious to take into account the chances that this will happen despite the very low percentage. Investment is one of the few economic sectors that offer daily opportunities to earn returns large enough to change lives. The truth is that even the most successful investors have been lucky in a minimal number of their investments within their lives, as we saw in Chapter 3 of this video. There's always the risk factor, even if one believes that financial decisions will be executed to perfection. Carl Richards, a great author and financial planner, has already mentioned, risk is what remains once you think you have thought of everything. We're all trying to make our world more complex. We need to believe that we live in a predictable and controllable world, and it is for this reason that we're looking for those people who have realized that they would satisfy this need. But the truth is that no one can meet this need. We are all aliens from our own planet. That is how Morgan Housel has taught us why money has more to do with psychology than it does with finance.